This is Diane Kahn from Humans of San Quentin, and you're listening to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith. And I'm going to remind you today to give someone a smile. You never know if it's the only one they're going to get.
Diane Kahn, thank you so much for being in Vroom Vroom Veer, and welcome to the show. How's it going?
It's going great, Jeff. Thank you for having me today. And I need to start out by saying, by having me here, you're also hearing voices from millions of people in prison around the world. So, because of that, I thank you.
And thank you. I mean, these are voices that need to be heard. Briefly look at the about page, and there was a guy named Juan. And I think Juan is still inside, right? And he's a journalist inside.
Yes. In fact, I
Yeah.
just saw him last Thursday and Friday. San Quentin had their second ever film festival inside prison.
Wow.
So I was seeing him there. But yes, I was teaching at the time when I met him inside guys to get their high school diploma, their
Right.
GED,
Right.
and was also following an online platform called Humans of New York. And I've always wanted to share the men's story in blue, and I've never had the opportunity. So yes, took off from there.
That's amazing. But what is the strange and odd and a story, a little bit in the weeds of how you ended up doing that? Because that, like, how it began. How did that come to be?
Yeah, I felt really fortunate when that happened. So you're a product of going to high school in the 80s like I was. And
Yes.
so I go on to be a teacher. I have four kids. We live here in Marin County, not too far from San Quentin. I would drive by there with the kids and say, that's where the bad guys are locked up. To me, it served its purpose. I really fell into the narrative of what our society and mainstream media has given us.
But I was thinking, if you never let these folks out and smell the air and get a little taste of freedom, it seems like it would incentivize them to really want to work towards that as a goal more, instead of if they stay in all the time. It's such a shock when they get out. They don't
Mhm.
know how to handle it anymore.
Exactly. Another person that comes to my mind, his name's Dennis Jefferson. He's currently incarcerated. In fact, I saw him last week as well. And he was sitting on the couch one Sunday afternoon, had three daughters that were under the age of 5. And he and his wife, Jasmine, get in a altercation. He ends up taking her life. What's beautiful about his story when he writes to us and he updates us on our website, he's named him the Red Flag Journals. He walks us through all the things that got him to that couch in that moment and then unravels them for us. So he talks about his three daughters, about how they have to go visit their mother at the graveyard from a
Mm.
foster home. He talks about adulting. He talks about his trauma. He talks about toxic masculinity. So for me, it's been beautiful having not been touched by incarceration or trauma. It's been nice to really get into the mind of someone like him
Yeah.
who is learning and
Right.
taking us on this journey. So
Right.
that I really appreciate him for coming out and saying that, right? He's got three daughters that I'm not sure how healthy, if at all, they exist, his relationship with them. So
Mm.
for him to be able to come out and, share what happened that day and what's going on with himself, it's amazing. Another thing that comes to my mind, which is new to us, so our summer interns, our college ones, there's people all the time that talk about their crime to us, but I'm hesitant to really put them online because I don't want to feed the narrative and the media of who they are. I want people to see who they are today, kind of like
Mm.
Brandon Stanton does with Humans of New York. You can instantly fall into their story and see what they're about today. But we ended up talking to like 5 guys that call us that we're close to, and they intimately talk about their crime that day and what happened
Intimately, yes, that's
and
the key, right?
yeah, what happened
Where
before
where their
the
brain
time
was, where, yeah, right.
yeah, and
Okay.
after, so we've named that area raw crime, which is still kinda hard to get my arms around because I don't like exposing that or sharing about someone's life.
I think it's important though. I
Yeah,
know we don't want to, because it's not pleasant. It's not like you go home feeling good about it. You kind of have to take on some of the baggage.
yeah.
But I think it's hugely important that we do this.
And I'm glad you
Really,
said that because I wonder how validating that is to the whole process, and like you said, it's important. Yeah,
for everybody,
yeah,
really. Right. Because there's a why. These things aren't just like, they're not suddenly aliens, or, you know, there's a reason. There's reasons, you
mm,
know.
mhm.
We they might not make sense to you and me, to Diane and Jeff, but at that time, it's not necessarily that it made sense. It was just what happened.
Exactly. Speaking of healing, the first thing that comes to my mind is a friend of mine, Gail Quasada, came to me one day and he was previously incarcerated and he was bringing a group of people inside for his group called the Men Collective. And he says, since you have access, do you mind helping me escort people in and out? So inside San Quentin, they had a day called the Day of Healing. And we ended up escorting 10 women. And if you can imagine them standing on a platform overlooking a yard, there's easily probably 1,500 men there dressed in blue. And each one of these women have been the victim of a very violent crime. And they each stand up and talk about being raped, about their husband being stabbed, about their daughter being killed by a drunk driver. And it was by far the most sobering day that I have had experience inside a prison. And there was not a dry eye. So as we're walking out, there's this woman, her name's Martina, and she has a group called the Ahimsa Collective. And what she does is she gets victims that have offenders incarcerated. She works with them anywhere from months to years and gets them to the point where they are ready to actually sit down inside a prison with an offender, have a face-to-face dialogue. So they call them victim offender dialogues. And she said to me, she's like, would you share these stories? Instantly my knee jerk is like, oh my gosh, I carry a big torch for people incarcerated. Not being a victim of a violent crime, I was super hesitant as to who I would be retriggering. Do I have the skills to do this? So
Mm,
instantly I thought of it as a wonderful opportunity. If these, in this case, women, and we have a couple men, are open to it. So pretty quickly I got into it, realized it wasn't something that could be written. I've interviewed 4 different pairs, half are incarcerated, half are free people. And I interview them after they've actually sat down inside a prison with their victim and their offender. Jeff, the most startling thing for me is I do carry a torch for people at Inside. I do want to share those voices.
mm.
These people that have been the victims of a violent crime, whether it be their dad being killed, their daughter being killed, I do not hold a candle to what they're trying to do with people inside. They're trying to free the men that have hurt them. They go into prisons. They work actively in prison reform and reentry in order to get people out.
That's amazing.
It's startling. So I did a podcast. I didn't have any experience. I probably should have talked to you long before I ever stepped into this world. Um,
It's a
but
lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot, but so fun. So I interviewed 10 different people after those victim offender dialogues, as well as Martina, who got us started in it. And then also Jorge, who has done the art for it. So I push people to go check out Prison Podcast. It's on our website as well as all the
We will link to
streaming
that in
channels.
the show notes for sure. That's amazing. So the prison podcast is all of these like post meeting interviews, kind of like an
Exactly.
outtake interview. Now, who do you interview? The incarcerated or the offended or both?
Both. Like Elle and
Mm.
Alan. So Elle's daughter, Emily, had just been at Starbucks with a girlfriend, walks out and is killed in the middle of the street by Alan, who was a drunk driver. He gets out of his car and looks at Emily, who's non-responsive on the asphalt.
You know, whenever I hear about that and I think about like me, my past, having drinks, and then like thinking, yeah, I think I'm okay to drive. And then I think about that. I go, no,
Right?
right. Because that's one thing that anybody could do, right? I mean, that
Yeah.
is like really, it's one bad decision away from killing
Yeah,
somebody.
and what's beautiful about Elle is she made sure he was convicted. So did what she had to do to make sure that he was behind bars. She realized when he's in prison, it was always in the back of her head that alcoholism wasn't her family. And she realized that, shoot, I really want to know what's going on with Alan. And that's when she really started on her path of getting to know him, getting to know the process of what has actually happened with him. And it's going to bring me to tears to say this, but they had been conversing a little bit. They go in that first day. She's escorted into prison. Imagine Alan at a wooden table. He's got guards near him, and his hands are actually shackled underneath the table. She looks at this man who's, taken her 21-year-old daughter's life. She turns to him. They haven't spoken a word to each other yet. She looks at him and says, I have a hug for you.
Wow.
Whoa, that woman, she developmentally is very far on that
Right.
And she
But
goes into prisons now and gives talks, and she's just an absolutely beautiful soul,
mm,
and as a visitor or someone going into prison, they, already social distance. You're not supposed to touch them or be near them, and they're very, very respectful of that. She always breaks those rules and say, "I have a hug for you." And she has so many men that, come up to her and admire her for where she is. Those victim offender dialogues are talk about healing. Holy crap. That
mm.
hits it on the head.
So Alan probably cannot forgive himself.
Well, that's the hardest part. Fancy you
Yeah.
should say that. I mean, you
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
forgive other people the act, but to actually look inside yourself and forgive.
I don't think I would get over
But you
that.
can
Me
actually
myself.
listen to him. He was recently released, so I met him in San
Yeah.
Quentin. In the US, we tend to incarcerate for long periods of time because, we don't have gun laws, whereas, you're anywhere in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, their average sentence there in, like, Norway, those places are 7 years. Most of the men, I think, in San Quentin are there for 25 minimum. But I turned to Alan, back to Emily, did say to her, I said, "Emily, how are you feeling about Alan getting out? He will walk out and hug his family. She's never getting Emily back." But she's a forgiving woman, that Elle. So I do need to check in with them and see how both of them are doing.
Great. So
Yeah.
people can find you at
Yeah.
humansofsanquentin.org. Anything else you want folks to know
Or
or do?
.com. Yeah, they can go to all of our social media channel. But I really want people to talk to each other, right? I also really want to share this work with the outside world. So if you have a company or somewhere that you want us to come talk, we will. I prefer to never get up on stage unless I have somebody previously incarcerated with me. So
Oh, nice.
would love to have more speaking engagements.
Could do that on a podcast. That would be cool.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you could bring like one of your storytellers or artists or musicians or anybody, I don't really care. Somebody either incarcerated, that would probably be difficult, but neat. But
Yeah.
if it could be like formerly incarcerated, now thriving and or surviving, who cares, whatever, that would be a really good show.
Yeah, I have those by the boatload.
Let's do that. Well, thank
Well,
you
thank
so much.
thank you.
I feel like my heart has grown 2 sizes or maybe 10 sizes. Feel a little
Oh.
bit like the Grinch on Christmas. We did good work.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it so much for your interest.
Thank you. You have a good one.
You too.
Talk to
Bye.
you next time. Bye bye.
All right, take care.